Welcome back to Success is Weird and Messy, the podcast where I, Kathleen Gabriel, talk with business owners about what happens when you carve your own path and how they turned obstacles into opportunities. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Summer Watson, the founder of Core Women and a cross-generational community empowerment and mentorship consultant. Dr. Summer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh, this is going to be great. I love talking with you. And I know that Core Women spans many projects, like, a
Yeah.
lot of things going on under that umbrella. Please tell me what you do and all the various aspects of the business.
Okay. So let me take you back just a little bit because let's step back into the history of summer, right? Because it really, that history and the evolution of that history and all the things that have been brought forward is what makes Core Women. And so if you step back into my history, I was predominantly raised by a single mom in California. And she always set this foundation of you can really go out and make your way, create your journey, create your path. And the one thing she said was, I always want you to be happy in what you're doing. Please be happy, right? And those are the expectations that I have. Yes, she had other boundaries and such, but
Well,
she
of
did
course,
want me to be
yes.
happy. And that I really appreciated. And she also gave me the flexibility and the leeway and the opportunity to go out and explore, even when I did a misstep or she didn't pick me up. She said, you're going to get up and you're going to learn how to get up, right? And so this is really important as we go through the story here because as I went through, the traditional path of going to high school, graduating, going to Berkeley, graduating from there, going to law school, getting accepted to law school back east in Connecticut, driving my car over there, and then deciding once I was there, I don't know if this path, as I've experienced it, if it was really for me. And the reason I said that is I really felt at the time that it was taking some of my personality away, some of the things that I really treasured about myself and that how I gave back to the community. I just felt like it was taking that away from me in some way. And I thought there's got to be a different way for me to serve. And so after 7 years of dating my high school boyfriend, we got married. That led us to another path. He joined the Marine Corps, and so we were off. And we went down to San Diego. He was stationed there, and I ended up getting a master's in human services and community counseling and started working in the nonprofit world and building communities, large community collaborations, bringing community to the table, building out programs, whether or not that was K through 12th grade schools, districts, but lots of programs. And
Yeah.
if you ever work for a nonprofit, you know that they don't have a lot of money, but they'll ask you to do a lot of different things. And
Yep.
that really helped me build my tool bag of skills to be able to do what I'm doing today. And so that evolved into part of that was also counseling. And I had two great mentors there. I had a clinical mentor and I had a kind of a program development social work mentor who helped me develop those skills. Both of them did develop the skills as a clinician and then develop my skills as a program developer and building communities. And so, and helping support communities who wanted to make change in this, that, or whatever way. And so, then that led to um, getting my doctoral degree in clinical psych. And so I started working in hospitals and I started working for the county and doing medical triage and assessment. So I became an expert in assessment, clinical assessment with human beings, and doing emergency triage essentially and clinical work in the field of psychology. And so people who were at risk of suicide, homicide, and grave disability, I was seeing day in and day out.
Wow.
And then I started running different departments in different hospitals and running triage and assessment departments as well as lots of different departments. And so I really love that. The work was fast. You had to make decisions quickly and you had to be really grounded in those decisions that you would make. And you also collaborated a lot with teams, which I loved. And so then kind of jumping forward, when my husband finally retired from the Marine Corps, I decided I wanted to build a business, and I wanted to build a business to give back. So I brought all those skills of building out programs, communities, assessment, all that stuff, those clinical skills, and started developing Core Women. Now, Core Women stands for how we kinetically connect, organically learn, reshape our lives through diverse interaction, and empower each other to promote change. So that's what CORE stands for. And as I developed Core Women LLC, I started building out a podcast like this to
Hmm.
support other women in community. How was I going to do that? How was I going to build that community? I really wanted to create something, and that happened 7 years ago, 350 episodes later, right? And so I didn't know what I was doing, and I just started. And so it was that. It was helping coaches strategically understand how to build out their programs, their business, and then also building out, as of recent, core mentorship solutions, because I've always loved the idea and the practice of mentorship. But I believe too that it needs to look different today than it did yesterday or years ago. And so we can talk about KMS as we develop into this conversation, but I really believe in wholly mentorship and leadership combined, and how we can help companies that are going through major changes today. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
there are just so many changes going on today, this year, that these companies need a lot of support. And that has to do with mentorship, leadership, and um, the multiple people from different generations that are in the workforce today.
That is a huge topic.
Yeah.
That is such a multi-level, in-depth, complex topic. Can you give me some insight into how you see how mentorship has been seen and practiced in the past and maybe even in the present, and what changes you're seeing and what changes you're seeing are necessary for mentorship in order for businesses to thrive and succeed, not just in today's environment, which is ever changing,
Yeah.
but ongoing through the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that question. There are so many things that have evolved over the years in regards to how we see each other. And that really has to do with generations, different generations. We have from traditionalists to Gen Zs out there in the workforce right now. Uh, we have people in their 70s plus, all the way through, the teens working
Yeah.
today. When you think about that, that's multiple generations, 5 to 6 generations right now in the workforce that may not understand each other because of communication, values, understanding backgrounds, all these different things, which are inhibiting us from helping that business owner be more successful. Some of the other things that are major changes that we've encountered over the years, recent years, is things like COVID
Yeah.
and social, or not social media, but I mean, I love electronics. I love the development of all this. However, when we look at these things, we look at the human components, or the lack of, or the barriers in between some of these, our communication, right? And especially when we're looking at some of the things that occurred during COVID, um, a lot of people were at home, and a lot of our young adults were at home, or young or teenagers, right? And so they were having to stay at home. They're not going to school. And then our expectation is we all come out of the house. Now they're going to have to get a job. Now they're going to have to learn a new system. They haven't been in a system type of atmosphere. They've been at home. They've missed part of high school. They've missed these milestones. And the expectation is now we want them to do A, B, or C, but are we training them? Are we mentoring them? Are we understanding them? Are we getting each other, right?
Yeah.
How is this happening? Are we being empathic? Are we being insensitive? Are we stereotyping? Like there's so many elements to this, right? And one of the things that because of these factors and variables that are influencing the workforce, I believed as I looked at mentorship and leadership, we had to change some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was demanding us to change it. It was like, hey, in your face, you got to change it because there are too many obstacles and variables right now that we're encountering, because the expectation is we're expecting these young folks to do the same thing that maybe previous generations did without the training, without the mentorship, without even the model of what that looks like because they were stuck in the house,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, how are we going to proceed and be supportive of one another? So when I started looking at the different, not even the different models, but even as I approached mentorship and how I was mentored, I absolutely loved my mentors. Don't get me wrong. But I also believe that because there have been so many changes in technology, innovation, in personal, personal habits, because of these variables that have impacted us and influenced us throughout the years, such as COVID, right? Um, we needed to look at mentorship in a different way. And part of that was I wanted to create a mentorship program where it was more horizontal, where we were taking more of the ego out of the framework, meaning that it's cross generational. So in my program, we eliminate the word mentee. And the reason we do that is because it starts breaking down walls, it starts breaking down the ego a little bit, and we allow the understanding that everybody has the opportunity to share knowledge. But we're only going to share knowledge and receive that knowledge if the ego somewhat steps aside.
That I think is brilliant because there is, I think, historically this idea that the older generation is there to teach, the younger generation is there to be silent and to learn. And what I think is missing from that is everything that you said about all of the changes that we've gone through. And including on the HR side, what I've seen is training's just gone. We don't have training programs in lots and lots of companies anymore. We have an expectation that people will come in with 0 years of experience being able to just hit the ground running on something they've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And even if they've had experience, maybe they don't have experience with this company. How does this company or team or anything do this work? And there is also the idea that honestly, that younger generation, they're going to be faster to pick up on all of those new technologies, all of the things that, I don't know, the older I get, I never thought I would get to this point, but the older I get, I realize, oh man, it is exhausting to keep learning a new thing. It
Yeah.
is exhausting to say, okay, I used this technology 3 years ago and now I have to do something new. Let's do it again. So absolutely, I have a ton to learn from people younger than me because they are digital natives to things that I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally hear that. I'm going to take it back to some years ago. I mean, some years ago, we're talking decades. So when I was going to Berkeley, I grew up in that Santa Cruz, Monterey Bay, Silicon Valley, Bay Area. And so you know what it's like working in that area. You worked in it for several years, right?
Oh yeah, for about 20. Yeah.
And so in the 80s and the 90s, we were seeing significant changes happening, right?
Yeah.
So, when they were pulling out of my school, they were pulling CS majors, they were pulling engineers out of the school at the time because, after they graduated, they were recruiting from there, from Berkeley. I mean, look at, we had Steve Wazinski, Apple coming out of
Yeah.
Berkeley. Like we had all these people. And so I was noticing at the time, and I was in a sorority and I had some CS majors, engineers, they never leave their room. And I was like, get out of the room, stop here, get off that computer, right? So, because at the time I was like an undergrad lit major, and I was like, social life. So
Yeah.
I was the president of my sorority. I'm like, come on, let's do this, right? So I had noticed though that they were getting recruited. They were being asked to quickly develop A, B, or C. At the time, it was hardware, software. There were a lot of things, even in Santa Cruz, even in San Jose, Silicon Valley. Things were companies were building up, they were closing down. Things were fast. Things
Yeah.
were from microchips to you name it to hardware, software. It was cycling quickly. So we were part of that phase. We were the beginning stages of that phase, and so we know what it looked like before computers,
Yeah.
before this technology, and now, right? We
Yeah.
have that gauge that we can look at before and after, which is I think it's really something special, to be able to do that, right? But at the same time, we've got this younger generation who's just in it, right? And they use it all the time. It's part of their existence. They don't know what it's like without it, right? And so it's how do we shift that quickly? And that's what
Yeah.
they're going to teach us when in regards to that innovation. They may not, and what I learned too is they may not know all of these applications, but they know how to quickly shift and learn them,
Yep.
right? And they can teach us that, and they can teach us how to maneuver and how to shift more quickly. And as we get older, we don't shift quite as quickly sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important as we're looking at this cross generational mentorship, we look at these variables where we're going to be able to help each other. And here's the thing, help those business owners become really successful. Because if they implement core mentorship solutions, a program like core mentorship solutions, which is horizontal, which really helps reduce that ego, where people are accepting of learning from one another without saying, oh, I'm the only one who knows everything, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one to give all the wisdom. That's outdated.
Yeah.
That's outdated thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because we've had way too many variables influence what we're doing today as business owners, that we absolutely need to be open to this cross-generational ideology and mentorship and method. And so we've constructed a method with core mentorship solutions to help support business owners with implementing this program. It also infuses some of the psychology because, of course, I'm a doctor of psychology, and we to eliminate or minimize, because we can't completely eliminate the ego, right? It's always going to be there to a certain degree, but we can minimize it to a degree that we're open and embracing of others and their knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And learning about each other if we have the steps and skills in place to be able to do that. Now, that's the mentorship component. The other component of this is the
Yes.
leadership component. And again, because we're seeing all kinds of issues, you see it on TV, you see it with these business owners, you see it with the shifts that are happening right now because of all the changes that are happening because of a new administration. It is
Yeah.
what it is, right? And so what happens when you get a new administration, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence you are politically, what does matter is there are changes that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's
Yeah.
changes that are happening, they influence the private and public sector. And
Mm-hmm.
so the private sector is going to be looking at that public sector and going, so what are they doing? What's happening? Where are we going to get our funding? That goes from nonprofit to private sector to government, right? And
Yeah.
so you're seeing that in higher education. An example of that is Columbia University. They almost got $400 million pulled, I think it was, right? And then they had to restart shifting, what was happening to be able to regain that $400 million, because that was going to influence their research, their everything that they could support in regards, not everything, but a lot of things that they could needed to support their system,
Yeah.
right? And so you're looking at, even theoretically and ideologically, companies like Target, Costco, Amazon, JP Morgan. Like, you're looking at all these people making major shifts right now because of what they're seeing, what's being
Yeah.
modeled. And
Absolutely.
it's all influencing. So because of these major shifts, we need to shift too. And that's why I developed KMS, so that we could help these companies implement a new mentorship program that's going to help them with sustainability, that's going to help them with employee retention, that's going to help with communication, innovation. And then it's also going to bring in a bunch of leaders, which I have about 17, 18 coaches, leadership facilitators that are ready in the wings right now, waiting to help help these companies integrate this program and teach communication and teach how to break down silos so that we are better, and more effective at speaking with one another, that we can communicate better, that we're not feeling so isolated because, as we're being asked to return to the office, not return to work because people have been working from home, but return to the office. Now we're also going to have to help our younger folks understand systems.
Yep.
And so when you think about all these variables, aren't you going to need some coaching? Aren't you going to need some facilitation and a new program that might consider all these variables?
Yeah. Because one thing that I see time and time again is that people are promoted into a place of they don't know how to do this job.
Yeah,
So if someone is excellent at what they do, and then they're promoted to lead a team of people who do what now they used to do,
yeah,
well, they know how to do the thing, but they don't necessarily know how to lead people to do the thing. They don't necessarily have this savvy that you're talking about of really considering the different styles of communication, the different perspectives, the different ways of working and being, and how to leverage that into success for even one person on the team, much less the entire team, much less in the context of the entire company. So
yeah,
that is a missing piece across the board in today's business world. We've
yeah.
really taken that away, and now it's really hurting us.
I know you must have seen so much over the years and how this has evolved and changed, and especially when it comes to leadership and the dynamics of leadership and what that looks like, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and it's exactly what you're saying. Somebody might have been put in, let's use this, okay? Because somebody might be an engineer, right?
Yeah.
And they might be running a department, but do they have the skill set to run the team?
Yeah.
I don't
And
know,
honestly,
you know,
engineers
maybe.
classic. I grew up actually in Silicon Valley. My dad and
Yeah.
my brother are both engineers. I worked with engineers for a very long time, doing human resources and still do sometimes with some of my clients. And it really is that mindset of not every engineer, but a lot of times you get into that mindset of I'm doing my thing. And yes,
Hmm.
it may be within a team context, but I'm doing my part and that's what I'm focusing on. And if that is all we teach people, then as soon as you put them into any group context, they're going to flail. They're going to have trouble. And it's not even about what they're capable of or what their personality is, because you can work with that. It's
Yeah.
more about if you don't ever expose them to this is part of the gig, if you don't ever hold them up and mentor them and teach them, well, then of course they're not going to be great in groups. Because why would they be? They've always been told you succeed as an individual.
Yeah.
And honestly, within that context, I would love to hear your thoughts on the stereotypes I always hear about generations, especially generations in the workforce, of, for instance, oh, well, that person's a baby boomer. They're not going to be able to learn new things. They're a construct of their generation. Or, oh, Gen Z, they don't want to work. Or all of those kind of things that, I hear all the time. I'm sure you hear all the time.
All the time. But you know what? Here's the thing. Okay. So there are those stereotypes, right? And that's what we need to talk about. And those things aren't being talked about. Let me mention something before we get into that. So, one of the pieces of Adlerian psychology that is infused into this program is is about Adlerian psychology. And Adler, Alfred Adler, he was the father of modern psychology. And what he basically said is we need as human beings to feel part of a construct, to feel part of a community. If we feel like we aren't part of, we start depressing. We start, moving in places where we feel more isolated. We feel more siloed. And so that's why it was so important to take that bit of psychology to absolutely infuse it into this program to say, hey, this is a community. Every workforce is a community. And if your people aren't feeling welcomed, aren't feeling part of, guess what? Are you going to get what you need from them? Are they going to give you what they need? Are they going to, feel fulfilled? And if we implement a program that absolutely helps that, it's a win-win. It's a win-win for the company. It's a win for the employee. And it begins to look like a
Yeah.
community that wants to help and listen and be empathic and understanding of one another to get to the mission, to get to the goals, right? And as a military spouse for 21 years, not just a military spouse, but a Marine Corps spouse for 21 years, we're about the mission, right? And
Yep.
so we were about retention. We want to help that company, but to help that company means they also need to help themselves.
Yeah.
And
And
they need to look at a context, a different type of context today, because we're
yeah.
different. We're dealing with different elements today than yesterday. Not to say that human functioning isn't similar to yesterday, but the variables that are influencing that behavior are different.
Yeah, and I really like this perspective more than the sort of at this company, we like to think that we're a family.
Yeah,
Because when you get into that, you get into, well, a lot of families are dysfunctional and have a lot of power problems within the family. Whereas
right.
if you think of it as we're in community with each other,
Yeah,
that brings a lot more genuineness, I think, to the endeavor and opens up the doors for more mutual success, which is, I think,
yes.
another thing that a lot of employees are yearning for.
Yeah,
And more small businesses definitely are looking at, hey, how can we really build our success on this mutual success? Because honestly, even if you don't care about community, I'll tell you, employee turnover is very expensive. So
yeah,
maybe start changing that mindset and incorporating that into your business success. It'll be easier to run your business. It'll be more pleasant to run your business. And all of a sudden you find that actually this is working towards what I want it to be. So really shifting that mindset is, I don't know. I think that's really the key to business success of now and the future.
yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, it's going to be more cost effective for that company, right? And tell us, give us a number. How much does it cost to, you know, to bring in a new employee after you've let somebody go?
Oh,
You
150% of their annual wage on
know,
average, more if it is a key position or an unusual position, but 150% is about average.
and that can be expensive,
Turns out, yeah,
very expensive. The the time, effort, energy, the everything that you've put into that person, and then to let them go to hire somebody else and at 150% of their
yeah. And
wage.
that actually
That's
doesn't really bring in all of the everything associated with that, all of the soft costs associated with, knowledge lost.
yeah,
It can be community loss because turns out people who work together, they might like each other. They might have feelings about people leaving or, situations in the company. There's all of these instances where if you really want to look at your bottom line, if you really want to look at profits and growth of your business, your employees are so expensive. Really look at that as an investment and really think of that as a human investment.
yeah. And I love that. And this is why what you do is so important. And also, this program is important. And
Yeah.
being able to review the patterns of change over time, right? And so, I do think that what you asked earlier about the different generations and the assumptions being made about those generations, I think that's important. But more importantly, is how do we break down those stereotypes? How do we
Yes.
break down those assumptions? And that's where those leaders, those facilitators, those trainers come in and really help those companies become more rooted in I'm invested in this community.
Yeah.
I'm invested in you and you and you. And so let me help you. Let me be of support because we want to grow this community. We all want to be successful here, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that to me is the overarching idea here is let's let me help you be a success. Let me help your community be more, come together and be able to innovate and be able to co-create and be able to do all these wonderful things together to get to your mission, to
Yeah.
be mission ready, to have that retention, right? And that to me is so important. And with this, diverse and eclectic background that I had, being a military spouse, being, somebody who's tried different things and said, I did make missteps, but I got back up. And you know what? I'm going to be by your side when you need my help.
Yeah.
And, if you just look at the podcast that I have, 7 years, 350 episodes, I continue to do it. So trust
Yes.
me, I'm going to be by your side. If you have a misstep, guess what? We learn from that.
Yeah.
That is wisdom that we bring forward. And we all have that wisdom that we brought forward. And we do that with our businesses as owners of businesses, even big businesses. They're going to have a misstep every now and again. But why not implement a program that helps you get through these massive changes that are occurring today?
That's incredible. Yeah. Absolutely. So with all of that, I ask all of my guests, what does success mean to you?
I think success is more of a feeling, right? It's more of, I had this interview yesterday, and I love the way she said this. She said, we were talking about money and wealth. And she said they're two distinctly different things. Money is about tools. Wealth is about a feeling and all these variables that influence how we feel. And I thought, that's exactly it. That's success right there. It's how we're feeling builds that bank account, right? And she said she was using some funny like financial terms. If you appreciate what you're doing, your money's going to appreciate, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
that's so good. That's so good. So I would say, be passionate and not just be passionate, but if you have a passion, be strategic about that passion, right? What do you want to do with it? What's your end goal? You always say, rather than be reactive, be responsive. And as you're looking at that or hearing that or thinking about responsiveness isn't about, just it's not about the action surpassing the frontal lobe and going back to the amygdala and you get into that fight or flight. It's about keep it here for a second and understand where in that frontal lobe and understand where you want to be in your response, right? And how is that bringing you joy? How is that cultivating something for you that is meaningful, intentional, purposeful? And to me, that's what's important. That's why I created Core Women. That's why I've done a lot of the things I've done throughout my life because here's one thing I've always valued. And I don't care how busy I was because I worked 30 hours when I was an undergrad. I took 17 units a semester. My parents didn't pay for my education. I was raised by a single mom. I was sorority president. But in all that, I was like, I'm going to have some fun and
You
I'm gonna
have to.
I'm gonna play big, right? And
Yeah.
so I always feel like keep playing, keep having fun, even when you're working, and be passionate about what you do because that in itself internally will cultivate passion and purpose and impact.
That sounds like success to me.
That's
I
success
love
to me.
it.
Thanks for the good
So,
question.
Dr. Summer, thank you again for joining me today. Where should people find you online?
They can go to Core Women, that's KORE women.com. They can also find Core Women on Instagram. They can find me on LinkedIn at Summer Watson MHS PhD. So
Fantastic. And I'll keep that in the show notes. So, everyone, please take a look at Core Women. And thank you for listening. You can find Success is Weird and Messy wherever you get your podcasts. And it helps us so much if you follow, rate, and review. And if you like the show, tell a friend. I'll see you next week.